Alrighty, everyone, I'm here with my friend Donnis Long. Where are you? You're in Pennsylvania, aren't you?
I'm in Freedom, Pennsylvania.
In Freedom, Pennsylvania. Awesome. Well, I wanted to have a kind of a conversation with Donnis and share it with everyone. And then we're going to do a lot more of these interviews on what the process people go through in learning how to muscle test, and then learning how to muscle test and doing work on other people. And because it's different for everyone, right? And everyone a lot of times has misconceptions about what it's like for other people to go through and learn how to muscle test, how long it takes, how difficult it is, how accurate you're supposed to be. And if you don't know what other people's journey is like, you can start your journey and think that maybe you're missing something, some sort of qualification or skill set or something like, right? And then you just walk away from it. And, a lot of times, I think a lot of people who be watching this, they see this energy work, and often people go, oh, this is my calling. They get so excited about it. They're like, it makes total sense. I want to contribute to people. This is like, boom, perfect. And then they start going through the process, and typically the rate limiting factor is the muscle testing part of it. Am I accurate? Is it working? Does it look like other people's? All that. So, let me ask you this, Donnis, how long ago, what was your first exposure to muscle testing? When was that?
Somewhere right around 2004. So
okay.
About since 2004.
So you had zero exposure before, or you kind of had some exposure but never thought about learning how to do it? What was it?
I had zero exposure before that time.
What was your first exposure?
My first exposure was was when I was trying to learn how to find food that worked for me. I'd become extremely allergic to foods and chemicals and environments, and so I was struggling to find food. And I met a chiropractor who used energy work in his chiropractic practice, and he used the arm testing of the muscles. And so once I learned that, I went on, started researching, and at that point began my journey of learning about applied kinesiology, muscle testing, muscle reflex technology, whatever.
Got it. Cool. So I think a lot of times people have experiences with a chiropractor doing that, but the chiropractor doesn't take any time to explain it whatsoever. Just like, hold your arm out. We'll do this, do that. Okay, you're good. Bye. Right?
No, that is true. You have to almost be inquisitive as to what technique he's using as he's working on you, he or she. That's true.
Sure. Yeah, I remember going to a chiropractor who would actually use his fingers like this on himself to do muscle testing and do it very accurately, very, very quickly. So a lot of times people use a lot of different methods. So you learn to do the arm thing on yourself, or have someone else do it for you, or what was your first technique that you tried?
The first technique that I learned through researching for myself was the sway test.
Okay.
And, and it felt very natural for me, and it was very accurate. And
so for people watching this review, what is the sway test?
The sway test is asking a question, and for me, it was, I would move forward if the answer was yes, and I would move back if the answer was no. And it's something so simple as asking your name, or saying, I am Steve, and I would sway back.
Right.
When I say I am Donnis, I would sway forward.
And you're doing this only when standing, or would you do it while sitting too, or?
In the early days, when I first started, I didn't have the confidence level and belief system as strong as I do today. So I was only standing at that time. And I didn't try any other methods until I became comfortable with that and confident in that particular method.
So like baby steps. You stand there, you hold something against your chest, you close your eyes, you make a statement, or you're testing if this thing is good for you, bad for you, and you sit there and relax until you feel yourself moving forward a bit, yes, backward a bit, no, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's
correct. Awesome. So you got comfortable with that, and then you're like, ooh, maybe there's other ways, because the sway test is great. It's a little slow though.
It is. It is. time consuming. It's a little slow and time consuming. And then 2006, I was introduced to the emotion code, and had a couple of other people that were working with me to develop this. And I look at the ability to muscle test to be intuitive and to be almost an additional sensory panel that we can pay attention to. So anyway, I learned how to use my the ring finger, or the finger method. Yeah, and yeah, that.
Like this?
And the interesting thing for me is mine is opposite of what a lot of people's are. My yes holds very firm, and my no opens wide open. So every person can be different, and that could be another reason people will say, well, that doesn't work for me. You're as unique with your muscle testing style as you are with your fingerprint. It can be totally different from what anyone else does.
Yeah.
And work absolutely accurate for you once you determine what your style is or method.
So it's just like sometimes people just need to play around and figure out what a yes for them feels like and what a no for them feels like.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after a while, that thing that was very faint becomes loud. You're like, oh, I can hear it totally loud and clear now. It was always there, but I never listening for it. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And for me, as I started out with food, a lot of food information and locations in different buildings, when you have environmental chemical type sensitivities, you can walk into a building and your body will tell you rather quickly whether it's a good place for you to be or not. And same within the grocery store, you get to become so confident you can pick something up and know right away if it's going to be good for you or not. And I think it's good to use it that way. I mean, why put things into our bodies or be in places that aren't healthy for us if we don't need to be?
Yeah, awesome. And one thing I do recently, which I find to be very helpful, because you can get a yes or no on food, but then sometimes I break the no down to like degrees. Does that make sense? Like A is no, but it's fine. B is like, probably not. C is like, this is causing some inflammatory issues. Yes. Below C is like, I know it's in the grocery store, but maybe it's not actually food for you, right? And so it's like sometimes, I don't have to avoid everything that my body muscle tests no on. I can go, well, I'm not going to be that picky, but everything C or below is like a definitely not, right? And sometimes it's very interesting, different things, some things that test for you well. Sometimes, other times, if you're under a little more stress or emotional stuff or different things, they test much worse for you at different times, Maybe your body could handle it at one time, and now you're having liver gallbladder issues and you're not digesting fat, and what was working for you before, not right now, right? And you can play around with that, So I always found that very interesting. Now I know you're a strong Christian. Was there any hesitancy with your resolving your Christian faith with muscle testing, or is that part easy for you? Did you get pushback on this from anybody? Kind of what's been your experience in that area?
I feel like that there has been a good bit of pushback and part of it has even been from myself to myself, just a little fearful of what the world might say or judge me as I've moved forward with this. And so being a Christian, many times the church teaches us to stay away from certain types of things, and energy work happens to be one of them, that it's a realm that they don't know a lot about, and it's an unseen realm. You can't see it. And that tends to make people a little bit apprehensive. I am for the most part past that and am moving forward freely now. But it did take some time for me to say, I'm accurate more times than I'm not. Now I do reserve the right to be wrong, and
it'd be weird if you weren't, right?
Right. I mean, because it's you, and I reserve the right to not have all the answers, because I don't. However, the more I trust, the better I feel in moving forward with this in my life. And so I'm becoming more confident and comfortable.
Awesome. I actually know a fairly well-known healing evangelist who had like a radical transformation in his life and really felt like he was supposed to pray for people for healing, and prayed for 700 people with 0 results before he started getting any results with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's like, it's crazy results. I mean, he's world famous for like, wow, miracles. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to pray for 700 people with no results and keep going until he figured it out. And we like muscle test once or twice. We're like, oh, wait, I don't think that was right. Forget it. I can't do it anymore. It's like, really? I mean, it's like, what type of important skill set in your life did you ever, I mean, like if you're a baby and you tried walking a bit and you fell on your face a couple times, you're like, that's it. This walking thing's not for me. Like, it would be a disaster, And so I don't know, it's weird that we put such pressure on ourselves performance-wise to have to, do a certain amount. But I do find it's interesting how many people do get pushback from their community of faith, right? But what people have to understand is that the way people's nervous system is wired is anything they don't understand. Their nervous system demands that you try and avoid it. And so what Christians will do is they will try to kind of connect that avoidance to spiritual reasons, right? It's just admitting it's like, hey, your nervous system thinks you're going to get eaten by saber-toothed tigers outside the cave. Really, that's the deal here. That's why you're freaked out about this, not because it's some weird spiritual thing. And the simple explanation I would give for people is that we live in a quantum physics world. Muscle testing is just tapping into that. And it's not a inherently spiritual thing. You certainly can take any natural process and anoint spirit on it. Anointing is a spirit coming on it to make something natural do more than it could on its own. And you can anoint things with a good spirit or bad, right? And so you just have to move forward confidently that what you're doing is you're asking for help, and have more confidence in God's ability to keep you than the devil's ability to deceive you. And it would be weird why people have so much confidence in the devil's ability to deceive them is sad. It's like, I thought you were one of God's children, made in his image with God's own spirit on the inside of you. I mean, why do you think you can be so easily deceived? Right. It does not make sense, But if you believe that and act on it, guess what? Yeah, you will be deceived a lot, for sure.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you just using the 2-finger thing now, or have you doing something different now, or what? What is your current technique?
Normally, when I'm working with someone, that would be what I would use currently. I still have some movement with certain places, and it kind of, that depends, but that's not usually involving a client. That's in my own life. It's my personal life.
Yeah.
When I'm muscle testing and working with client, to move quickly, that seems to be the best for me. And then I've had the opportunity to do training with a number of people who, and especially that it's fun to watch the ones who say muscle testing doesn't work for me. I've not been able to do that, and then help them learn their technique. So I do believe that I haven't met anyone yet that hasn't been able to muscle test after we've worked on it a little bit.
Yeah. So what are some of the key things that shift for people that take them from not being very good at it all to actually then being able to do more muscle testing?
Well, what I found is the people's belief systems begin to see some things change in their lives and realign. And then it just seems to it becomes something then that they can do. It's changing from an I can't to an I can is one of the very basic steps in learning to muscle test.
Yeah. Awesome. They're like, oh, everyone should be able to do this, therefore I should be able to do this, therefore why not go for it? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I find one of the big keys is letting go of what it means to do it wrong, right? It's like
Yeah.
you are going to be inaccurate sometimes, but you put judgment on what that actually means. And so when people make a mistake and then they assign judgment that that means they're worth less or it somehow impacts their identity or their value, no, it doesn't. You don't need to put that judgment on it. It just means you weren't accurate. That's all. But if your ego gets involved, then it's about you, right? And then, people, Brene Brown's work on vulnerability and shame and being able to live wholeheartedly is vital, just to be able to say, I'm always worth love. Therefore, I can be wholehearted because my failure never connects me to guilt and shame. And that's really vital in doing muscle testing too, because you're like, I can be wrong 80% of the time. Who cares? That 20%, I could change someone's life. And really, that's true,
Right.
Often in doing work with people, it's the one or two insights that shifts everything.
Yes.
Would it be worth being wrong the other 80% of the time to get to the 20% of the time that you are,
Yes.
Of course. Absolutely. And there's evidence all over the world of things only working a small percentage of the time that people still invest in. I mean, most prescription drugs don't work for most people.
That's correct.
Most of the time they're not working. And yet some of the time, every drug works for somebody sometime. And I'm not a big fan of pharmaceuticals. Don't get me wrong, right? Because the time it isn't working for you could actually kill you too. And muscle testing is not going to hurt anybody. So that's often what I do. And so I like the phrase you said, I reserve the right to be wrong. Right. That's a lot of times when I do sessions with people, I go, hey, I'm not real committed to being 100% accurate. I'm committed to helping you. And if we come across something that doesn't make sense, just toss it out the window. It's like no big deal. I relax, they relax, then we're good and we're more accurate. Yeah.
Right.
So what words of encouragement would you have for someone going down this path on learning? First of all, what are the real benefits that if people really understood the benefits and the superpower of muscle testing, a lot more people would follow through with this, what would you say are some of the main benefits to actually being able to muscle test accurately?
I believe that it allows you to move forward. We tend to get stuck in certain belief systems and patterns, and they can keep us from growing. And if there's any illness involved at all, it can really hold you in a dis-ease pattern. So being able to move forward with your life, and to be encouraging to others and to help others when they're stuck at their place in life. So it's an evolving process that I think that muscle testing helps us to recognize things within ourselves that we didn't recognize were there, and to recognize both good and bad outside sources, and better determine what's right for us. So,
yeah.
I really encourage everyone to see how this feels to them, and what they would be able to do with it. I know it's growing, and quantum physics is really becoming more known and recognized and viable. And I do believe this is an important piece of that for everyone.
Awesome. One way I describe it to people is it really helps you get an aha moment. An aha moment is when you go, God, it's totally different than I thought it was. And boom, easier, simple, faster, more effective solution for your physical health, for your emotional health, for your spiritual health, and for other people, shifting things. So it's especially helpful if you're stuck. This one thing, you're like, I don't understand why this isn't working. Well, muscle testing, if you be neutral, you can find, the problem is totally different. The solution is totally different. It's like, right? And so for me personally, I know one thing Dr. Brad Nelson said is that muscle testing is the gateway to intuition. For me, I really felt like it's helped me as a Christian fine-tune my also ability to hear from God as well, if that makes sense.
I do agree with that.
And just being able to recognize more, as a Christian, I'm supposed to follow the leading in my heart, the peace, right? And sometimes I don't technically muscle test it, but I'm more familiar with what the light and easy feels like versus the heavy thing, right? And so that's been very helpful for me in that way too. So,
and I think scripturally, you know, we have the verse that tells us to speak to the mountain and it would be moved or removed, or, you know, I mean, really, literally, how many things are in your life that you don't know how to realign them? But sometimes the rabbit trails you go on when you muscle test, but before you know it, you've come to a place that things have really shifted and realigned, and you go, that mountain did move, or the bridge that was needed at that moment gets created. There's just different scenarios that you see some really life-changing things in your own life and the life of those that you're working with.
yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes what I say is there's power in clarity. If you have more clarity, you have more power. If you're like, I know exactly this, you're like, you can shift it faster, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you know the name of the mountain and the foundation of it and this and this and this and this, you can take care of that mountain very quickly versus some vague thing and you're like been working on it for years, right? And it's just not moving. I found, you know, for my own self in terms of my spirituality, to be able to dial down on coming to realize beliefs I had that I didn't realize I had. And you're like, holy cow, I do believe that. And I'm like, oh, okay, God, I repented that. Like, I didn't realize that that's totally accurate and I need to shift that. And I was like, wow, I was stuck in that area and I didn't even realize it, you know, and then
Right.
you do some huge things. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I hope this helps some other people get some clarity and encouragement on moving forward. And we're going to do some more of these interviews as well, because I think it's really helpful for people to see other people's journey and the benefits of it to encourage them on their own. So I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you very much.